Hello and welcome to Ani's Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. Wootton Wraiths. The air was crisp as Holly Arnold strolled along the winding path near Wootton Creek. The Isle of Wight had always been her sanctuary, a place where the modern world's noise felt muted. She loved the creek's tranquility, the way its brackish waters shimmered under the moonlight, and the gentle rustling of reeds as the tide ebbed and flowed. Tonight, however, the atmosphere was heavy, laden with a peculiar stillness that made her pause. Holly tightened her scarf against the sudden chill. The sky, a patchwork of grey clouds, allowed only fleeting glimpses of the full moon. Something about the evening felt off, as though the air itself held its breath. She dismissed the unease with a shake of her head and pressed on, the rhythmic crunch of her boots on gravel the only sound accompanying her. As she rounded a bend, a faint melody reached her ears. It was ethereal, a haunting tune that seemed to drift across the water. Holly stopped, straining to identify the source. The melody grew louder, accompanied by the faint hum of voices. She squinted into the darkness, her heart quickening as shapes began to emerge from the mist rolling over the creek. At first, they appeared to be no more than shadows, indistinct and wavering. But as Holly drew closer, details sharpened. Figures clad in tattered, soaked clothing stumbled along the creek's edge, their faces pale and etched with despair. A woman in a torn dress clutched a sodden doll to her chest, her lips moving silently as though in prayer. A man, his leg bent unnaturally, dragged himself forward, leaving a trail of water in his wake. Their eyes empty and hollow seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Holly's breath caught in her throat. She stepped back, her heel catching on a root, nearly sending her sprawling. The figures didn't seem to notice her. They moved as though trapped in some grim pantomime, their actions repetitive, mechanical. Holly's pulse thundered in her ears, but curiosity rooted her to the spot. The whisper came from everywhere and nowhere. Holly turned, her eyes darting through the shadows. "Who's there?" she called. The figures froze. Slowly they turned toward her, their empty eyes locking onto hers. Holly felt the chill seep into her bones as an overwhelming sense of sorrow washed over her. One figure, a man with the captain's hat askew on his head, stepped forward. His mouth opened, releasing a garbled cry that sounded like water gurgling through a broken pipe. "Beneath the ship," he rasped. "The Solent Star." Holly swallowed hard, her mind racing. She had read about the Solent Star, a passenger ship that had wrecked near Wootton Creek over a century ago. Dozens had perished when a sudden storm drove the vessel onto the rocks. Survivors' tales spoke of cries for help echoing long after the ship had sunk. Holly whispered. The captain's eyes seemed to flicker with a faint light, a spark of awareness. The bound. To the moment, to the water, relief. Behind him, the other wraiths began to move again, reenacting their final moments. A mother tried to shield her child from invisible waves. A man clung to a wooden plank, his expression one of desperate hope that quickly gave way to despair as he sank to his knees. Holly's chest tightened. The captain extended a translucent hand toward her. "The bell." "Where is it?" Holly asked, stepping forward despite the icy fear coursing through her veins. "At the ship's bell," he said. "Arrest it." Holly's mind raced. She recalled stories of the Solent Star's bell being lost to the depths, a relic claimed by the sea. If what the captain said was true, recovering it might break their torment. The wraiths began to fade, their forms dissolving into mist. The captain lingered a moment longer, his hollow gaze fixed on Holly. "Please," he implored. The night returned to silence, the air suddenly warmer. Holly stood alone, her heart hammering. She knew she couldn't ignore their plea. Gathering her resolve, she turned back toward the path, determination hardening her features. She would find the bell, no matter what it took. Days later, armed with maps, diving equipment, and a determination she didn't know she possessed, Holly returned to Wootton Creek. The search for the bell would not be easy, but the wraith's haunted eyes had seared themselves into her memory. As she prepared to descend into the murky depths, the haunting melody from that night echoed faintly in her mind, a reminder of the souls depending on her. Somewhere beneath the water, the past waited to be uncovered and perhaps, finally, put to rest. Holly's first dive yielded nothing but cold, silt-filled water and a profound sense of unease. The creek's depths were treacherous, tangled with submerged branches and debris from years of storms. Each dive grew more taxing, her air supply dwindling faster as her frustration mounted. Yet every time she surfaced, she heard the faint, mournful chime of a bell carried on the breeze. On her fourth dive, something changed. As she descended into the murky depths, her flashlight caught a glint of metal buried in the silt. Heart-pounding, she swam closer. There it was, the ship's bell, encrusted with barnacles but unmistakable. Holly reached out, her gloved hands brushing against its cold surface. A shock rippled through her, a jolt that wasn't entirely physical. Images flooded her mind of the storm, the ship's desperate passengers, the captain's final cry. She gritted her teeth and worked to free the bell, her movements frantic. The water seemed to grow colder, the current more insistent, as though the creek itself sought to keep the bell trapped. Finally, with a triumphant tug, the bell came loose. Holly cradled it in her arms, its weight far heavier than she anticipated. She began her ascent, the surface's shimmering light a beacon guiding her upward. Breaking through the water, Holly gasped for air, holding the bell aloft. The mournful chime sounded again, louder this time, resonating across the creek. As the sound faded, the atmosphere shifted. The oppressive weight that had hung over Wootton Creek lifted, replaced by a serene stillness. On the shore, the wraiths stood waiting. Their forms were clearer now, their faces no longer twisted in anguish. The captain stepped forward, his hollow eyes filled with gratitude. "You have freed us," he said. One by one, the wraiths began to fade, their forms dissolving into the night. The captain lingered, tipping his hat to Holly before vanishing with a final, whispered, "Peace at last." Holly stood alone, the bell clutched tightly in her hands. The creek was quiet once more, its waters calm and untroubled. She knew she would never forget what she had seen or the courage it had taken to face the past. As she walked away, the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, bathing Wootton Creek in golden light. For the first time in over a century, the waters were truly at peace. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had a great day.